I am Lil Dupree, and I am turning it over, who's going to come over here and be picked up on the mic, to Lindsay Marsh, who is our Senior Associate, particularly in charge of census engagement and the census project at the partnership.
I guess it's a good thing that our clicker doesn't work so we can record for this. Thank you for joining us. I see some buttons in the crowd, which makes me really happy. We're going to go through a little bit about the census and what it means to community action today and what you can do as community action agencies to help us with the count. We all know the promise. Do you want to do the promise, Lil? Community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. So this is a bedrock foundation of community action. And for those of us on the census team, we care about the entire community is the key part of this. We care about the entire community, so we count the entire community. Who knows something about the census in the room? And I know I've got ringers, so what do you know about the census?
I know I'm a county
You're not.
count person, and I'm on the city's committee.
You're on the complete count committee for your city? Excellent. What do you know, sir?
I'm on the complete count committee for the city of New Braunfels, Texas.
Thank you. So he's on the
Also our agency designated person for count.
Did you get your red, white, and blue ribbon?
I did.
Yes. Okay. So he's on the complete count committee for his town and for the partnership, which we will get into. Anyone else know something about the census? Yes.
I think it's primarily going to be online, so one of our challenges is web access.
Yes. So they're hoping that 60% of the census is online this year, which is terrifying and also titillating. It's an opportunity and a crisis. Is anyone worried about the census? Yeah, me too. Okay, we're going to talk about it. Okay. So what is the census? The census is codified in the Constitution. It is written, it's Article 2, Section 1, I think. Is that right? Did I get that right? Oh, yes, Article 1, Section 2. But it says that we count everyone who lives in America every 10 years. So the decennial census has happened since 1790, and we count everybody. We count people who have green cards. We count people with visas if they live in America. We count diplomats. We count American citizens. If you live in America on April 1st, 2020, we will count you. If you're vacationing from Europe, we will not count you. But we do this, and then we take the whole total number, and we divide it by 435. Who knows why? Anyone? This is interactive, if you haven't figured that out. We're going to talk today. No one knows 435? 435.
House of Representatives?
Yes. So we take that number and we divide it by 435, which is the number of members of the House of Representatives. And then they divvy that up between the states. So we are in Illinois right now. I want to say Illinois has 8 congressional members, but there might be 9. Come next year when the census is done, they might have 1 less. That's because the geographic political scheme has moved. The population of the country has moved. People are moving towards California, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, missing a whole bunch down there, Arizona, New Mexico. The population is shifting to the south, and that part of that's immigration. But we do this every 10 years because our political system is based on representation of the population, and so we have to do a population count. We also do this because our federal dollars are apportioned through census count money. Our money is apportioned through the census. So once we count all those people and we divide up the districts, there will be a redistricting process through all the states. So if you lose a congressional seat, then you have to redraw your other congressional districts to make sure that they all have representation. Then they will also do state legislative districts and state senate districts. Often they will do voting districts and maybe school districts. The census really permeates through the entire community in every which way. We care about the political representation for our people, our community action clients and our customers. But we also care about the federal dollars. So it's a political representation thing, but it's also about federal dollars for us. Census data is used by the federal government to make all kinds of decisions. If you have federal roads in your state, which you do, it matters how many people you have because federal funding for transportation, DOT dollars, go to you based on that number. How many of you have potholes in your federal highways? If you're counted, maybe you'll get a little bit more money to fix up your roads. The census is also used to inform organizational decisions. I live in a relatively new neighborhood. It's about 2 years old, and there's a gelato store around the corner. They know we have kids in the neighborhood. There are lots of businesses that make decisions based on the census information that we collect every 10 years. Amazon's my big example. How many of you use Amazon? Really? That's it? Really? You guys awake? Amazon decided that they were going to put their headquarters in Brooklyn and right outside Washington, D.C. in Crystal City, and they used census data to figure that out, to figure out that there was an infrastructure that was there, that they had enough people that they could buy houses or find housing, and they can find employees, that the transportation system would handle that. So the census data is used by businesses, school systems, firehouses, hospitals. If you have a larger concentration in one neighborhood in your city or state or town that's been growing up and building up, you need that infrastructure, and the census data will inform your government, your local government on that. The census data is also used to inform voter rights. If we know where people are who need protection for voter rights, we are better able to protect them. So it's one of the ways that we use it in that regard.
Lindsay,
Yes, sir.
can I share a real-life story?
Yes, would you?
Previous slide.
Sure. Will you come up here so you use the microphone for me, please? This is Alan Stansberry. He is one of our 2 subject matter experts on the census. The other one is Jim Masters, who's in the semi-back row, who might wave his hand. Hi, Jim. Here you go, Alan.
Yeah, this is a real-life story to bring home why we use the census as we do. When we graduated from college, my wife graduated with a teaching credential, and she went to our local county education department to apply for a job as a teacher in any of the school districts that needed a teacher. Well, lo and behold, a few days later, she gets a frantic phone call from the education department saying that there was a school district nearby who were desperate for a teacher, a credentialed teacher. So she went over and found out that there was an overflow of about 12 to 15 students, 2nd and 3rd graders, in that school. And they hired her on the spot. And they had the only facility they had was literally the janitor's closet to put the students in. Now, why was this? Well, it was simply this is because the school superintendent didn't have the necessary census information to project the number of incoming students into that school. So when that school year started, there was more enrollments than they could handle. So even though the information had been out there, it wasn't accurate. So when it comes to drawing school district lines, that's why the census is so necessary. So I share that story with you to bring that home.
Thank you. Thank you. Something else that highlights is that we miss, there's a giant undercount in this country of children who are 1 to 5 years old. It's one of the largest undercounted or hard to count communities in the country. Often people will return their census forms and miss their kids, which is something that we are working to address this cycle. That just means that those kids, so it could have been that the 2-year-old was missed on the census form, but the next census is when that child is 12, and so then you miss federal dollars and federal funding for that child's entire elementary school career. All right, real estate developers, city planners, businesses, local government officials, and even residents all use census data. You want to talk about the timeline? Sure. Come on over.
I am the next contestant on Census Are Us. All right, so the timeline of the census. When does everybody think they started planning for this census?
March last year.
It's, there's some humor in that answer, and there's some operational stuff that certainly was happening. But they actually started planning for the census the day after the last census. It is the largest non-military ground operation in the country. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So the timeline here, we know you can't read it, by the way. We have these up on our website in PowerPoint form, so you can take these and use them yourselves, build on them. And so they're up on our site already, and we'll do more, and we'll help you do others. But basically, in March of 18, you can see here, the questions were delivered to Congress, and then we march through. The census count actually begins in January, not April 1st, which is Census Day, in remote Alaskan villages. Then the census starts sending things out. The update leave, the internet self-response begins in March. Letters go out with reminders. We're going to talk all about that process here shortly. But things start really happening in January into March, and then April 1st is Census Day. That is the date, not only should you should do it if you can do it on any number of days, but that's the date on which, if you are born on April 1st, if you have a child born on April 1st, that child is counted. That child was born on April 2nd, not counted. People who pass away, you do not actually have to count. We finally got that cleared up with the census. Yeah, if they pass away, you don't need to do it. And then it follows from there. Then this you can probably read. These are the key dates we think you need to know. Again, this is available to you. Feel free to take or not take notes as you wish. So invitations are sent out in the middle of March. Every household in America. If you see census people out there right now, they're probably enumerating addresses, checking to be sure. We heard a fascinating story in West Virginia. 5 houses share one physical address. The census person sort of went, show us where that is, because they're figuring that out. They're figuring out how to do that, making sure. And so much of how many of you serve rural areas in your CAA or your association? Okay. How many of you serve mixed urban-rural? A lot of us do, right? The rural piece is so much harder for enumerators. So they're out in the field now, checking addresses, making sure everything's up. They work with other agencies to do that. So they're taking care of that now, but invitations are actually going to be sent out in an envelope, for the most part with a code to respond online, when we are going to address that as well. It's not the only way people can respond, even if that's the invitation they get. They can still do paper, they can still do phone. So March 16th to April 3rd, letters and postcards are sent out. April 1st, as I mentioned, is Census Day. Reminder letters start to go out the second week of April. We notice you haven't filled out your census for this address. Please do so. Then a final postcard is sent. Please, please do so. After that, they start doing people come to visit you in the field. They actually go door to door. They do not enter people's homes, but they do go up on the porch. Knock, knock, knock. How many of you have people maybe that you serve, that you know, that you're related to, or you, who are afraid to talk to the government? Right? A lot of our clients, whether or not they're documented, are afraid. They don't like to talk to the government. Well, the fact that we know more about them from LIHEAP than the census knows about them notwithstanding, this is why you're trusted messengers, by the way. It's foreshadowing. We call that foreshadowing in literature. This is why we do that. So 95% are going to get a mailed invitation. 5% will actually get a dropped off form from a census taker. And the census is not random about this. They know where there are areas with truly no internet at all. That's part of that and doing it. Less than 1% of households, though, in America will be actually counted by somebody coming to the door with a census going, we're just going to do it with you. That's rare unless you don't fill out your information. So one of the things that we'll talk more about in the Q&A and in the role playing that we'll do if nobody else wants to play with us is that if people don't want the census coming to their house, the best thing to do is to fill it out online or call it in. I don't care if it's because you're undocumented, just afraid, or if you're dealing meth. It doesn't matter. If you don't want them to come to visit you, fill it out, and they won't. I mean, that's actually a big selling point for our clients. All right, economics of the census. As I said, it's the biggest non-military ground operation in the country. So, $15 billion a year. We're also going to talk, one thing CAAs can do and should be doing is encouraging their folk to apply for census jobs. These are good paying jobs, many part-time evenings and weekends, some full-time, which means you're in the Fed system with benefits and can then be favored for other federal jobs. But these are terrific jobs. The lowest paying is about $13.50 an hour across the country, and in cities or places where the wages are higher, it's up to $22 an hour for address enumerators, people to go door to door and filling it out. 27, up to 27. So these can be great. You might not want to tell your frontline client-facing staff about that, especially if you're in one of those higher income areas. But the average cost for counting a household, and these are in constant dollars, has gone so far up. It's terribly expensive. Every household they have to go to, of course, increases that cost. Here is one of the key points. I always say in presentations at conferences, there's so much to learn, there's so much to know. If we have one or two things we want you to remember, of course we'd like you to remember everything from every session. But the key takeaways, this is one of them. For every person counted or not counted in your communities, about $2,000 per person, not per household, per person, per year, 10 years. That's a lot of resources for a community to miss out on because somebody didn't get counted. We work with the very hardest of the hard to count, the people who are undercounted the most. We are in the perfect position as a network to make a difference. So why does it matter to community action? Do you want me to roll this and then flip it back, or do you want to grab it? Pick.
We're a team. Well, we're a team. So I think we're starting to get the idea of why the census matters to community action. Census data is crucial for that essential funding. If you miss 10 people who are homeless in your area, you are missing $20,000 a year for 10 years. And that's almost $250,000. Multiply that by however many people you miss. Conversely, one of the best messages we found for some of these folks is to say you can help your community by being counted. That's kind of a crucial message that really cuts through the clutter. People who are reluctant, but they might do it for their community, especially if they were counted last time. If they were counted in 2010, you don't want to lose the funding because they weren't recounted in 2020. And again, we're going to go back to this message again. It causes our communities to lose their fair share. We're not asking for anything special. We're not pitting one community over another. We're simply saying that this is what your population, your community is due, and we want to make sure that all of our communities get their fair share.
Can you go back for just a second?
Sure.
You'd asked about Roma earlier. We had a good conversation. We're not going to do Roma. This is census. But you know, in Roma, we talk about how to do the community needs assessment, right? What data do we most rely on for our community needs assessment? Thank you. That is a key piece of our data. And as you said about schools education, you mentioned roads. Community action does over 1,000 community needs assessments every cycle, right? Every agency does it. If we are working from false, flawed, fundamental data, we don't have the right picture of our community. That, to me, for us, as staff and board and execs of community action agencies and associations and state offices, that is the fundamental reason that we have to care about the data itself, not the resources or anything else. We need that data to be accurate so that we can best serve our communities. We're going to talk about different messages, but that's mine to you in terms of helping your staff understand, spreading the message. Then again, if we're working from that data, what you publish in your report, it's not right. It's correct because it matches the federal data, but it's not accurate. So the more we can do to ensure accuracy, the better off we are in that sense.
Thank you. This should be familiar to a lot of you. There's about $77 billion that belong to our programs out of the federal budget of $864 billion. That money includes CSBG funding, which we all receive, LIHEAP, Head Start. How many Head Start programs do we have in the room? LIHEAP programs, Meals on Wheels. Okay, that's SSBG. That was a trick question. Rental rural assistance programs, substance abuse block grants, all of these things come down to that federal count and the federal dollars. We talked a little bit earlier about how it used to be $16 a household in 1970 to count, and today it is 116, I think, 107, something like that. That's a huge increase over not a lot of time, but there are several reasons for it. I know this is also a hard screen to read, so I'll try to run through them quickly. We have a very mobile population. The average for America is that 14 to 18% of Americans move every year. Anyone have a guess as to what it is for our communities? 30. And I think that's actually kind of low. But that makes sense. You lose a job, you get evicted, you move in with family members for a couple months, you can't stay any longer, you pick somewhere else, and it's not sanitary, so you move. I mean, our communities move on the regular, which makes them hard to find. And we have rapidly changing use of technology. So it's cool that we're using the online stuff this year, but it's also a challenge. My 94-year-old grandmother will not be completing her census form online. And so that's a challenge for a lot of us. And how many of us have elderly populations? All of us, right? So that's a concern. How many of us use Snapchat? Do we have any Snapchatters, Instagrammers? How many of you have more than one email address? And it goes to your smartphone that y'all carry? Right, no one has a smartphone? Jim, you have a smartphone. No? How many of you feel overwhelmed by your mobile device on a daily basis? Right? So that's actually a challenge for us as well. People don't check their mailboxes as often. So when you get that physical mail in the mailbox, people tend to ignore it because they don't check their mailboxes every day, or it doesn't seem important, or you get lots of like lending club whatevers that look like census forms, and so you ignore that. So we have to cut through that clutter with these populations to make sure that they're looking for these forms. We have an increasingly diverse population in this country. The census this year they've always had phone lines to answer questions, but this year they will also allow respondents over the phone, which is another new thing. It used to only be paper. But the phone lines will have 13 different languages, and they will have overall census documentation translated into 59 languages. So that's great because we have this incredible diverse culture of America and lots of different languages. But that also means that we have to find the right people in the right languages and make sure that they connect. We also have a lot of informal complex living arrangements. So part of that $107 number is that we have a lot more divorces in this country and a lot more split houses. So if you have a divorced couple with 2 kids, who counts those children? Does anyone know? That day, exactly. So Census Day is a snapshot of America. So it's actually a Wednesday night this year. So if you are the mother of the kids and you get the kids during the school week, oh, you get a button. That's great.
Prizes. Prizes for
Prizes
participation.
that we also have all over the.
Cuento conmigo. I count. And
I
count.
did when I didn't even finish the answer.
You answered earlier.
Earlier.
We'll give out buttons. Yes.
So, my ex-wife has the kids on April 1st, but we don't bother to go around and fill out the census until May 15th. We have to figure out between the two of us where they were at on April 1st and count it that way?
No. Right, I see your question. As long as,
She filled it out on April 1st when they're with her. I filled out on April 10th when they're with me.
no, okay, so, no, right, no. So, but April 1st is what I call it a snapshot day. So when Lil said that if you had a baby on April 2nd, you would not count that baby because April 1st is the day you fill it out for. So you go back to whatever that day was. So let's say you and your ex-wife have an arrangement where she has the kids during the school week. Then you know that on a Wednesday night she had the kids and so she should fill out the form. Now, if you're a responsible parent, you should check with your former spouse and make sure that she's going to put those kids on that form. That's how kids get missed. But April 1st is a snapshot day of America. So what?
I was just going to say,
Please.
you can also, speaking as a family that has lots of weird configurations, you have to agree every year who gets the kids for the tax exemption, right? Make that who counts them on the census. The census, that's how you figure it out. It's April 1st, where were you, which household? But if you're divorced in the same town and somebody counts it, nobody's going to come check, right? We just want to make sure the kids are counted.
It's better to count them twice because they have procedures in place to catch that than to not count them at all. So I would err on the side of putting those kids on your form, but also education is key.
Absolutely.
Is key. Yes.
I am I'm curious, I've never asked before, what identifying factors are captured in that?
Sure.
For your children, is it their names and date of birth?
Yes.
Names, social security numbers, what?
I don't believe it's social security number. So the question for those in the room and for the video, what is actually on the census form? The census form is about 10 questions. It is less invasive than a LIHEAP intake form. It's name, age, race, gender, birthday. If you rent or own your home, what am I missing, gentlemen?
Name, address, the house, renter owned.
We need to add a slide on this because people ask it and we now know.
And we do have it actually uploaded in our middle curriculum.
Yeah, which we will get to. So, but they're basic gender demographic questions. And this year they've changed it so race is split so you can be multiracial, which is great. There's still some confusion over whether or not they'll allow transgender or no gender on the next census. This year it will just be male and female. But they're basic demographics, but it is name and age and date of birth for all members of the household. But that gets really confusing really quickly. I mean, as you see, if you're a family that has foreign relatives living with you, they get counted, but there are multiple households in a house. You might not want your landlord to know that you have family living with you, or you might have a mixed status house. So some of you might be undocumented and some of you might be legal, and you might be worried that if you fill out this form, your family members will be deported. I can stand here today and say that that will not happen. Other things might, but that will not happen. Like ICE does not get access to the census data, period, full stop. And the citizenship question, which was a major concern just a few weeks ago, is off the table. It's still going to cause problems for us, but there will not be a citizenship question on the 2020 census. So we still have to contend with the fear of that because a lot of people have just heard buzzwords in the news. And so having it even in the news is a win for those people who would suppress those census takers. And we have to fight that, but I can unequivocally tell you, and we'll go into it a little bit later, why I'm so confident that that is the case. So, yes?
And so will this track the poverty, like, levels?
I believe it has income.
Does it have income?
I'm pretty sure income's one of them.
have marital status too.
Yep, that sounds right, too. Yeah. Again, we need to, now that it's been finalized, we need to add a slide that has all 10 of those questions, but yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Please.
One of the things, I serve on 3 different committees right now for the census.
Thank you. Well, thank you. You get 3 buttons for that.
No, that's
No.
okay, really. One of the questions I have is, and we have a LGBTQT, picking them all?
Yep, close.
One that, wait, added the T.
The T through, yeah,
Right,
throw it.
Yeah, right, threw me off. That same-sex couples were not going to be listed as married, because in the past, what they had done is if it was listed that they were a married couple, that they would automatically change the sex to one man, one woman.
That doesn't surprise me, but I haven't looked into that yet, so we will add that to our next complete count committee.
Every session and we go
Yeah.
through the answers. Jim's got his hand up.
Yes, sir.
Same-sex husband, wife, spouse is one possible response. Same-sex unmarried partner is another. And then opposite sex unmarried partner, opposite sex husband and wife spouse. So you can indicate marital status for either same-sex
Okay.
or opposite.
Does everybody hear that? So you can indicate same sex for marital status. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Okay, we will take more questions. I'm going to go through a few more slides first. Where were we? So complex living and informal living arrangements. How many of you have a grandparent that takes care of a grandchild? And that grandchild has been living with that grandmother for a couple of months, but any day now she's going to go back and live with her parents or one of her parents. If she lives with that grandmother on census day, the grandmother should count her. And again, it's always better to count that child twice than to not count that child at all.
Excuse me, I'm going to take care of that.
We like to keep us on our toes. They'd like to keep us on our toes. There's also a strong distrust in government. I have Lil for a few reasons, and that is one of them. Are you going to give them a button out there? No? No? So we have a lot of distrust in government, and I think that that's partially the very polarized political times that we live in, and it's also things like the fear-mongering of the citizenship question. And it makes people more apt to ignore the census. There are 4 categories of people who are hard to count, which we also call an undercount. Hard to locate, new housing. That's why they're out there knocking doors right now to make sure that they have all of the doors that they possibly can. They also did work with Amazon and the USPS to make sure that they had the best, cleanest database of houses that they possibly could. But there will be houses finished between now and April 1st. So that's something that we have to remember. Some people don't want to be found, that they just don't want to be found for a variety of reasons. People are suspicious of the government. We have definitely undocumented people in this country. We've got language barriers. We have people who have trouble reading and don't understand. I mean, they don't see the posters that say the census is coming. They don't understand that. We also have, my favorite, the access barriers. There are some gated communities that are really wealthy to do places that census enumerators can't get into, so that's a barrier, which I think is kind of funny. It amuses me. So somebody could be hard to locate and hard to persuade. Somebody could be all 4 of these things. It just depends on their personal situation, and we deal with all of it. These are the traditionally defined groups for hard to count by the census. Stop me if any of you recognize something here. We've got low income, young children, single parents, people of color, people with disabilities, homeless, people in rural communities, immigrants, multifamily. This is a snapshot of community action, which is why we're involved. We have actually been involved in this since 1970, which is the first census that community action was around for, and we've played a role in the census every year, every decennial since then. Oh, and something else to mention. The Census Bureau isn't something that pops up overnight. They have been working on the 2020 census since the end of the 2010 census. The Census Bureau is a round-the-clock, round-the-year government bureaucracy building entity. They are part of the Department of Commerce, and they have professional staff. They have career staffers. They've got career staffers that have been there for 20-something years and more. They also do the American Consumer Survey, which some people confuse with the decennial, and that is far more intensive. It's a multi-page form, and it asks all kinds of questions like, how do you commute to work? And just a lot more invasive things. This is just that decennial 10-question demographic form that we're talking about, and so people might get confused with that as well. Yes? Yep. So that's actually going to be in February. So the question is what happens with group homes and shelters and the like. The census is currently working with people who run those facilities. So domestic violence shelters, retirement communities, assisted living facilities, dormitories. All of those will be, college kids are counted in the dorms that they live in. And they are counted, you can't trust college kids to do that, so they're counted by the administration of the school. Prisons are also counted in the counties where they reside, federal prisons. Yes?
College students, you said, are counted by the administration?
The administration of the colleges. So, right, if you go to University of Chicago and you live in the dorms, then the University of Chicago will fill out the forms for those kids.
Rather than parent and students?
Correct, rather than the parent. Because the kids don't live there, the kids live at college. But again, if... Yes. And so even if they're counted on your taxes, and again, if we count that college kid twice, the system will catch. I mean, they work with that, and I would rather that kid get counted twice than not at all, which is why they go to the dorms. But the domestic violence shelters, they're working with the administrations of those buildings. Some of the retirement facilities, they'll take court-mandated recovery. If there's a group home, that will happen in February. And so they are working with the administration of those buildings to make sure that those people are counted. Homeless people, that's another interesting thing. They're going to be sending out enumerators in pairs of 2. I believe it is actually on Census Day, but it might not all happen at the same time. And they will go to known places where homeless people tend to congregate in your community, which is why the complete count committees, foreshadowing again, are so important. Because if you have a homeless population, like in Denver where I live, we regularly sweep homeless people out of wherever they're camping. We have a camping ban. And it means that our homeless populations are always on the move. So talking to the mayor about talking to the police force and not doing those sweeps in the days around the enumeration for homeless people is really, really important. And you have to make sure that stuff like that happens so we count those people. I have a question in the back.
Just going back to the college students, so we have a local community college. Some of them are in dorms, but a lot of those kids live off campus in rental property. So they'll get their census at that address.
Yes, the rent.
But does the university work with them to say, hey, these buildings
I hope so.
at a loss? You know, it's
Yes,
probably
so-
hard to count. I mean,
so-
is that something we can focus on to make sure that
Yes.
those
So the question is, if you've got a community college and you have some kids in dorms and some kids not in dorms, or, I mean, there are lots of colleges have off-campus housing. Those off-campus housing dwellings will receive a census form. And the universities can certainly do a lot to make sure that those kids who live off campus know about the census and look for those forms, especially hit up history departments and have the history departments talk about the importance of the census or any kind of a civics class. That is a great angle to get at those populations. The kids in the dorms will be counted. Kids who live off campus will not, but they will receive a census form at their domicile. Yes, yes. Okay. What is being done? So, the Census Bureau is a large and in-charge bureau. They're going to hire 420,000 people for this cycle. That is a lot of people. We are hoping that they will hire some of you and some of your clients. We have partnered with the Census Bureau, and in fact, we're going to have one of our partners come in on Friday for the plenary session, so you can hear from the census directly on Friday between 11 and 11:45. And by partnering with them, you can have a partnership coordinator come in and talk to you and talk to your staff. You can have a meeting with your clients and have them come and answer questions if that's what works for you. You can also use them to get materials. I just got a question from our Complete Count Committee whether or not the census was going to have tchotchkes and T-shirts and all that kind of good stuff. I don't know the answer for that, but I'm going to figure that out, and I will let folks know. Because that's a good question. I mean, materials, we don't have the budget for a lot of materials. We do have buttons. But we're hoping that the census comes through with some of that. The Census Bureau also has a website where you can sign up for emails from them, and they're a lot of fun if you're a data nerd like I am. They come out with really cool statistics and really crazy things that they figure out from the census data, which also might help some of you explain to your clients what they do with this data. One of the most important things about the data is that it's all anonymous. They aggregate the data, they take out all of the personal information, like name and address, like none of that is tied to the data, but they can tell you where trends are in this country, like what age a woman has her first child, or what age people are getting married today versus 1970. Like some of the statistics for the nerds out there, like me, it's a lot of fun. So we encourage you to do that. There are 8 different regional offices. 8? That sounds wrong. 6. It's 6, sorry. There's 8 of something else, I'm sure. So Chicago has one, New York, Pennsylvania, Denver, Los Angeles, and Atlanta. And these are the regional hubs. They are going to open up 248 different census offices around the country. So there will be one relatively near you. I cannot guarantee, especially for some of you in really rural places, that you'll have a Census Bureau within driving distance, but they are serving those areas, and they are having enumerators go out. I think, and they pay 58 cents a mile. So if you want to be an enumerator in a rural area, you can make a lot of money in mileage. We have contact information for these folks, and we're getting more information about the partnership specialists that serve these regions. So, for example, I know that there is already a state office in Arizona, and they will open up 5 or 6 more offices by the time November rolls around. Those will all be open. I also happen to know that Nebraska doesn't have a one yet, but they will. They will, and they're rolling out some of those in the fall. They are also focusing on the states with higher hard-to-count populations, which would be California, Texas, Florida, Arizona, New Mexico, a lot of the border states that have large migrant populations, Massachusetts, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Those places are all probably going to get their offices open first because those have larger, hard-to-count populations. you want to talk about complete count committees? Oh, yeah, it's true. I do. I love this. So one of the best programs that the Census Bureau has is the Complete Count Committee. How many of you in the room are on a Complete Count Committee in your local area? Okay, so a few of you. Or statewide. So a lot of the governors are setting up complete count committees because a lot of the governors recognize that even though this is a federal matter, it makes a big difference to their state and their state budget. So there are a lot of governors out there that have signed into law a complete count committee, forming a complete count committee, and they have they appoint people for that committee to make sure that the entire state is talking about what to do for the census. You have to do it on a state level, and you also have to do it on a local level. There are a ton of complete count committees in the country. So every little blue dot is a complete count committee that's been reported to the Bureau. We're sure that there are a lot out there that have not officially registered as complete count committees in those areas. One of the things that this does is bring all the partners to the table. So it's not unlike a tripartite board that includes elected officials, private enterprise, and people who are in poverty. It's the same concept, and we're doing the same thing. So this is a way for people to have partners and to share resources and to make sure that there's a coordination of efforts towards talking to the people who are hardest to count to make sure our states get the resources that they need.
I want to add something
Please.
about the complete count committees. It is really important. Community Actions always works really closely with faith communities across our network, right? Particularly in some areas, where it came out of faith communities. But pretty much we all work with churches and candidates and everything else. That's a huge source of trusted messengers. And some areas, for instance, Alabama, actually has a partnership specialist specifically for faith communities.
I've seen a few of those.
To work into those. Places where there is high church attendance, a high number of churches, they're actually dedicating a staff position in that state to reaching out to those folks. So if you're doing a complete count community in your area, make sure to include churches. Even if you're not doing one, just work with your churches. Talk about trusted messengers, right? And that's what the Census Bureau knows. That's why census staff are actually being paid to go out and network with churches.
So,
really important part.
this is on a later slide, but I'm going to tell you now. So we're going to cheat a little bit. 7 touches is the magic number. So we're trying to get we want to touch every one of our clients 7 times. And how many of you get a lot of political junk mail when election season goes around? All of you, right? You get at least 7 mailers per candidate, I promise. I had a former life in politics. So that's a magic number because it takes 7 touches to break through the clutter. And again, how many of you check your mailbox daily and get anything other than junk mail? So 7 touches is where we're going with this. And we're hoping that you'll get every client will have 7 touches from their faith leader and 7 touches from community action. And they'll have 7 touches from their grocery store or the local coffee shop that they go to. So we need to get 7 touches from as many partners in your community as we possibly can to amplify that message so it cuts through at every level that we can possibly get. So that's one of the things that you can do with the Complete Count Committee. The census has outreach tools. They have a lot of really great website resources. We are calling the ones that are most useful for community action and putting them on our website as well. But this is a 30-page outreach toolkit. If any of you have never organized anything before in your life, and this is your first foray, some of it might be done for you, so don't be scared. But if you need a great resource, this is one that is really worth its weight. Talk about our partners, Lil. And I got this working. I turned it on.
Rebooting is always a good idea, right? So it is really exciting to all of us, and I hope to all of you, to see the partnerships logo in the middle of these kinds of national partners. We are part of Census Counts 2020. We are working with everything from the Leadership Conference Fund to the Fair Immigration Reform, Arab American Institute Foundation, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, the NALEO, the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, the National LGBTQ Task Force, heard that come up, Faith in Public Life, and there are more. Putting together some of the trusted messages that we're going to talk, effective messages to reach specific populations, messages that resonate. And a lot of them resonate across groups, but making certain that we're being, I hope everybody got to hear John Powell, making sure that our messages are about belonging not about othering. Making sure that we are being as inclusive as possible. So part of this, you can go to censuscounts.org and take the pledge to just be a partner in the sense of we're going to take some action here. We're going to talk about ways to do that easily. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in community action for about 15 years. I've worked in the field, worked at national office as a TNTA person. I worked back in the field. I've been an ED of a small rural Appalachian agency, and I'm back in the field. We know that for you to do census work in the field unfunded means we have to make this cheap, fast, and easy for you. This has to be simple for you to do in the field in the midst of your other work. So as we think about this, we want you to be part of this too. We want you to go to censuscounts.org and take that pledge so that we can continue to show all of the partners that community action, we're the only ones with offices in every community almost. That we're the only ones who cover the country this way of that group.
I was just thinking, I'm from Amarillo, Texas, but we serve 26 counties. And I'm dispatcher for the transportation department.
Yes.
And this would be a great opportunity because we go to their houses and pick them up and take them to the doctor.
There was,
We're gonna have a graphic postcard that you can download and print,
Okay,
and
great.
your drivers can carry them and pass out cards.
how many of you use the National Community Action Month Toolkit? Anybody? Find it useful, easy, download stuff, put your logo on it or not, print it and use it? Same deal coming your way. Over here.
I think there's, ICA, the Illinois Association of
Mhm.
Community Action Agencies,
Uh-huh.
just actually reached out to us last week. I think the census office has a grant program going.
Yes.
So Illinois, I think, is eligible for $200 million, and then it's broken into regions, only because they just asked us for our
Mm-hmm.
rudimentary budget. So when you talk about funding.
Wonderful here.
It would be like 135,000 just for our agency alone, and that allows us to do events, hire staff.
Do all of that good work. Some states are doing it. Some states are making state money available
Okay,
for the
yeah.
same
So there-
thing.
There are, I mean, you'll have to look into it, but there are.
We're trying to gather that information and publish that to make sure that there's a running list. So I know Colorado has one, the deadline's September 15th.
Yeah,
Actually,
I know
if
Missouri just announced one, so there are a few that are popping up.
Virginia, if you
California
got
has
us,
one.
if you know of one, send it to us so that we can add it to the list of things that we know about. And we can also say, community action's participating here. So you see, our tag and our card that we're using, we care about the entire community, therefore we count the entire community. We count. Our people count. So what are we doing? Well, we're here with you. You may or may not have seen that we have already done a number of webinars, and we'll be doing a lot more as we exit conference season. So we're educating and increasing awareness. What is the census? What does it mean? What are the easy and the hard questions? Mobilizing you all to take action. Asking you to do it. Generating resources that are useful to you. The census has terrific resources, hundreds of them. Did anybody have time to go through hundreds of resources to find the coloring book pages? Well,
Jim does.
yeah, but he's not running an agency at the moment. He does sometimes. How many of you have the energy to go find the coloring book pages for the census? Guess what? We linked them for you. They're coloring books and coloring single pages in different languages. Well, right now it's just Spanish and English, but still, there's at least Spanish and English coloring pages. We got them for Head Starts, right? We're going to make sure we find what we think, or you tell us, a lot of stuff comes from the field, is the most useful, curate it, funnel down that huge mass of information to make it useful for you. Cheap, fast, easy. All right, what we want to do is equip you to do local outreach efforts. So our working group is composed of folks from all around the country. These are folks in the hardest to count states traditionally. And Ron Gilbert, a late ad, and he is not at this conference, but if you see Renee Dismuke, congratulate her. Alabama was way out in front.
Which is why Alabama's on this list.
Right, which is why we had him join. Are you from Alabama? Which agency? Oh,
That's where Renee was.
I was just going to say, baby. I train in Alabama a lot. So, but Alabama has been out in front for a while. Their complete count committee is amazing. They started it way before there was anything going on. The governor is behind it, and you know why? They're at risk of losing money in representation, and they were badly undercounted last time. Right? So, we're informing this with folks on our website, communityactionpartnership.com. Just click on Programs and click on Census. You don't have to copy this down. Go to the national website, Programs, Census, you'll find everything. Our Community Action Complete Count Committee. May I ask how many EDs are in the room, please? How many CEOs, EDs? If you lead an agency, put your hand up. I'm not going to ask anyone an embarrassing question like, have you given us somebody? I know you're on our Complete Count Committee, so thank you. If you haven't already, please, I already put it in the app. If you go search me in the app for the conference, you will see a link to nominate someone on your staff for the Complete Count Committee. If you are staff at an agency or board, do we have any board members in the room? We're very glad to have you here. A brief segue. Whether or not work is piling up at home, this is in fact our day job. This is what we do for a living out of passion because the retirement, as they said earlier, you're here away from your day life as well as the rest of that. And that gift is one that Community Action does not take lightly or for granted. So thank you. Thank you very much for being here. We live for our board members. We live by our board members. So that said, please go back to your agencies. If you're an ED, please click the link and nominate somebody. We want to be able to activate them. You're not promising to do something. We're asking you to send people through the curriculum that we're developing. 2 hours, frontline staff can learn about the census, learn about how to say things correctly, learn what they can and can't do, get a certificate for HR, friend of the census from Community Action, but they can learn this stuff from their desks. But you can do more if you wish to. We're putting together a second course on what agencies can do. So as you think about a Complete Count Committee, this is ours for the whole country. There's statewide Complete Count Committees. There are, I think, some other nationals for affinity groups. There are lots of locals. This is ours. And it's our way to get into every agency at the same time with the same information to make it simple. In an ideal world, unless the ED wants to do it, a staffer who has the trust of the frontline staff as well as leadership team is great, but you can use it as a leadership opportunity. But we want to be able to reach out and touch each agency with breaking news, new resources, and be sure that that's getting into people's hands to be used in the field. All right, 100% network participation, please help us get there. Jim and Alan are leading very much more in-depth sessions tomorrow, a two-parter on the census. So to do a deeper dive into this, hear many more stories about this, go into much more detail than 90 minutes with 40 remaining, and we do not go over, we promise, than we can do here today. So much more in-depth, much more detail.
What time is that, I'm sorry?
There are 2 sessions tomorrow in the two slots. One's in the morning, one's in the afternoon. And look for the word census.
The first one will be more of an overview like this, right, Jim? And then the second one is more of a hands-on workshop.
Okay.
That helps.
And actually working through it. We're going to demonstrate some of the messages here today, but they're going to really go into them in depth tomorrow. All right, so we really, really care about this. We've emailed every association director in the country. Thank you for sending that out to agencies. Many have joined, but we're still only at 239. Now, we're in how many states now?
We're in 45 states, but some of those are duplicates from a couple agencies have more than one rep.
Which is fine. That you can have more than
We'll
one.
take that. We'd rather-
We don't want 6, right? But if you want to put a couple in and you want to get it as the ED and you want somebody else to act on it, that's okay. But we want every agency represented. So please help us get there. This is going to be our Moodle Academy. We are finalizing it, Lindsay and I, this afternoon. It has quizzes for each module so that we can say that people have actually learned something and demonstrated their knowledge, but it's easy, multiple of choice, true or false, the real information. Look through the PowerPoint, look through a census resource, watch a video, take a quiz. 5 to 8 questions per module, and there's only, did I do 3 or 4? I can't remember. But it'll be going live Friday in the plenary session. So it's going to be free and accessible to the network. You are welcome to share these materials, though. We can't do Moodle if you're not in Community Action, but we are going to develop, by request, sort of a zip file probably of the materials you can use with your partners, by all means. There was an HHS representative years ago who said, steal shamelessly, share willingly. So what we have is open to all. So what can you do? Learn about the census in your community. You can network, partner, connect, and build. These are our bring it home slides in case you haven't figured that
I mean, it's, well,
And
yes.
then social media and communications campaigns, but I want to turn it back to Lindsay because she has just launched both of our email news groups in
Yep.
the last couple of weeks.
Yep, so we'll start off with the first slide. Learn about the census in your community. So one of the things we found really effective is to work in groups, which is maybe what Jim is planning tomorrow. But we will be doing some of this work ourselves with folks to take a deeper dive into who is hard to count in our community and why. So we want people to take a look and figure out, maybe it's because it's a rural community, maybe it's because it's a heavy immigrant community. Take a look at what one of 1-4 fears it is and 1-4 barriers, and then figure out how to break through for your community. So just like community action is not the same anywhere else, the census approach won't be either, because it has to be tailored for your community. So we cannot prescribe a one-size-fits-all, because that would be like us telling you that your agency has to have a Head Start and you have to have a LIHEAP, even if you don't need either one of those things in your agency. So what are the major concerns? What makes up the hard to count? Figure out who your partner is for the census and have them come help you, where your regional census office is, where your local census office will be. One of the groups that's funding us also funded the City University of New York to put together a very handy dandy little map. I don't think we have time today and I actually don't have internet on this computer right now. Yeah, I know, I tried.
We're in the depths of the
So finding the hard to count, so this is, it's called the CUNY Census Hard to Count Maps 2020.us. You can click on your state, you can click on your town, you can click on your census tract, you can look by county. There are all kinds of different ways that you can do this. And where the red and the orange, those are the harder to count areas. So they also give you an idea of why those locales might be hard to count. So some of them talk about immigrants, some of them talk about lack of internet access. So you can get an idea of what's going on in your neighborhood if you don't already know by looking at these maps. The census has its own system called the Rome system. This scores each location on a score of 1 to 100 based on percentage of response. So 25 is considered a really low response area because 25% did not respond. That's how that kind of works out. But the darker shaded areas in here are those response rates. And if you look at this and the CUNY map, you can get a pretty good idea of the locations where you need to focus your energies and your efforts. And I know that we're not out in the field. We don't go out and knock doors. People come to us for the most part, although we do transportation and those sorts of things. But it just gives you an idea of what populations you would need to target and who you need to figure out how to reach. We are encouraging people to join or form a complete count committee. When we started doing this back in April, there weren't very many. So we were really encouraging people to form a complete count committee. But now there are a whole ton. Oh, I thought I had it.
It was an earlier slide.
Okay, earlier slide. Oh, yes, it was. Okay, I'm not losing my mind. So there is a census website that's in our slide deck where you can click, and then it goes into the state again, and you can find the local complete count committees that are in your neighborhood. So you can figure out if there's one covering your counties. So please do take a look at that, because even if it's a meeting once a month, it's good to know what else is happening in your community.
And it's not a bad thing on your CNA, on your needs assessment, to say that our agency took part in that, advocating for the people in places that we serve.
Yes. We've gone over some of these things, but I am going to hit again, recruit to fill census jobs. I know that some of the census locations are having a really hard time recruiting. I do live in Colorado. I don't mean to keep putting it up as an example, but I know that we're missing about 40,000 applicants right now, mostly in the rural districts, in some of the Native American areas, and the Western Slope, which is largely farm territory, well, and beautiful mountain vistas if you want to come visit. But yes.
Have you heard anything at all about whether elected officials can apply to be census takers?
Okay, so the question is, can elected officials apply to be enumerators or work for the census? I don't see why not.
We have some information here, or you're just agreeing that it's nothing behind it.
I don't see why not, but we will double check that for you, and I will include it in our next e-newsletter, which if you sign the sign-in sheet and I can read your email, you'll get.
Hang on, we got somebody right here.
Yes,
You don't have to sign, you can sign in, raise your hand on the first page.
yeah, I'm the mayor of community. And I applied for a job just to see the process, so when I do go to meetings, I can share.
Awesome.
And it's kind of, I was told by another person who's on the school board that they were called, elected school board, and told that they cannot be on the committee because they're elected official.
They can't be on the committee, or they can't be an enumerator? Okay, okay,
I have not gotten a call back.
okay.
But they,
I also do know that because of the government shutdown earlier earlier in the winter, I know that they've been very slow with the hiring process, which is one of the reasons they're in trouble with hiring. But we'll get confirmation. I'll find the written word on that, and we will let everybody know. But thank you.
I've had census job fair, I had 15 of them in my area also. And so.
Can I give you 3 buttons?
We're doing what we can do to try to fill the job.
Yeah.
Because,
He's getting asked.
Well, and
the
the,
idea is to hire people who are locals.
Yeah.
Because they know the community, they know the neighborhood.
exactly,
They know where the people are.
exactly.
Also, I was told by the state that the census, when they do call you about a job, they only call once. And if you do not answer the phone, they go to the next name.
That's true.
And you're.
They might cycle through because they're getting, they might cycle through again, but that is true. I actually, before the partnership hired me, I was hired by the census. But the process was taking forever and a day. So I waited 4 months and I hadn't heard anything. 2 weeks after I started, I got a phone call that said, "Are you ready for that job?" And I said, "No." But they said they needed me to decide right then and there when they called me in December, 4 months after I had applied. And I said, "Can you call me back in an hour?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Okay, we're going to do this now." So I'm not suggesting that the federal hiring procedures are.
And they are 100% online.
Yeah, it is online, but it does make me speechless how they do it, but we do encourage. And one of the reasons we want to push so hard is because it is better for someone who is in your community that the community knows to go knock on that door. Because if we have to import somebody they're not coming from Washington, D.C. necessarily, but you don't want somebody knocking doors from New York City in rural Appalachia. Like, that's a terrible idea because they're not going to be trusted and they're not going to answer the door.
It's much more effective to have people knocking on doors who look like the people whose doors they're knocking on,
Yep.
who sound like the people whose doors they're knocking on, who are of and from the community. The census knows that. They're pushed hard in communities to get those folks. They want that. Their hiring process notwithstanding, which doesn't make it easy.
I know.
But they do try, and they do put it out there. That's really important.
And we do understand the irony of what we're asking. Okay, so census outreach at the agency level, we are launching our Moodle Academy, and as Lil said, it should take about 2 hours for anybody to go through. We are also getting messaging from hard-to-count populations from our partners. So as Lil mentioned, we are one of the things, we have the geographic spread. We also have people from every community and every walk of life walking in and out of our doors every day. So it's something that we can apply. We are not doing message testing of our own, because how would we do that? But we are using our partners, and we are taking the messages that they are researching and telling our community action agencies what those are. Case in point, we are partnering with Head Start, and we will have a specific Head Start webinar. One of our partners is actually hosting a webinar on 1 to 5 year old undercount messaging and methods on September 10th. So we can send that out again, but it was on the last e-news that we sent out. Anyone is welcome to join. But we're going to partner with them and bring them in to do a community action specific messaging, and because they're experts on that population and we're experts on community action. So we're going to bring them together. We're also planning on doing one of those with NALEO, which is the National Association of Latino Elected Officials. They have a robust nationwide program. They have a lot more funding than we do. But we're gonna partner with them to make sure we hit that Spanish and Hispanic population, and we're gonna do that with the NAACP and the Urban League. So we're partnering with our partners to bring in that messaging. We also mentioned we're going to have posters and resources, technical assistance and questions. You guys don't have time to dig through Census Bureau materials to find the answer. We have relationships with some census partners. Some of them actually even email us back from time to time. We're cultivating those relationships on our level so we can answer questions for you and let us dig. So if you have a random question about the census or curiosity, please ask us and let us dig for you. Yes?
If we're part of the group that's been assigned to be on the national,
Complete Count Committee?
and we're also on regional efforts and then local efforts, that, I'm sure that's helpful in lots of different ways.
Many.
But with the Moodle Academy, if we are wanting to teach our leadership, can we do it through that Moodle Academy, our leadership board? Can we do it through that? Or is it something we have to learn and then we have to pass it on our own?
You can do it any way that makes sense to you. We also have some one-pagers, and if there's a resource that would be helpful for you that we have not yet created, ask us, because chances are you're not the only one who could use that resource, and we'll add it to our toolkit. So please, did everybody hear her question? So does she have to learn it and then teach her leadership? No. We can make them do it, or there's a 7-minute video that we can have them watch that'll give them the basics.
And we can get all of that through Moodle.
It's
And now,
Yeah, the
Friday.
course will go live, we say Friday, we're debuting it Friday, it's Labor Day weekend, give us till Tuesday to actually do it. But we're gonna show it to you.
That's
on
news
Friday.
to me.
Taking a 3-day weekend?
After this
Yes.
conference,
Yes,
I
I love you guys, I need a day off too. But yes, it's going live Friday. And so it's intended for people who actually talk to clients, but that doesn't mean that someone who never sees a client can't go through it, learn about it, and talk it up with their staff, with their board. Sign up for Moodle, all you need is an email address. The account gets clicked, and then they can go through it. But we can also, I see your hand, we can also happily give you PowerPoints. The Moodle Academy has things like the census resources attached to each of the short ones, because again, we want people to do it in 2 hours. We made that commitment to the network that they could send staff through knowing that that's the timeline, right? So we can help you with things that you could use to train. Originally, the whole project was going to be train the trainer, and we quickly realized that while that's a terrific goal, a couple hours isn't going to train a trainer, but it can get you the basics, right? And so we can help you go beyond the basics. We are actually doing a Census 202 course on how agencies can do this. We're going to need another month on that, but it's become clear that people want that. Sir, you had a question?
Okay, so the academy is going live Friday. When is the 7-minute video available?
It's done. We're posting it on the website, but it got lost in the convention shuffle. So I can't email it to you, but it will be live on our website shortly, and that will be in our next e-news.
And we're having an all-staff training the first part of November with that, and we have a segment for census.
Awesome.
With the 7-minute video be helpful to frontline staff?
Yes.
Very much.
Also, where are you, and do you want me to come? Is it a good place to visit?
Here in Texas, South Texas.
We are doing trainings like that, so if you want us to do a webinar, we are doing webinars. We have webinars that we have already done that are live. I would go for the most recent one because that's the newest information, but we will continue to post those when we're done with them. And I know that I'm doing a couple of staffs have asked me to come out and do a training just for their staff. I'm going to do one in Missouri for 160 people in October. So part of our resource is that I have 4 trainers in the room that can go places. So if you have a big meeting, we can send somebody out to help you, or we can do a webinar. So if that's helpful.
Or you can just use the
Or you can use the things.
Because that's a click and play, right?
Yes, and yes.
Staff meetings, as I know, are often, how much can we cram in before we get to the insurance, the benefits, the mandatory 401k sign off, the withholding for your flex account, right? You're trying to get all this in. So if it's an all-staff training and you want to show, by the way, Derek Simpson, who many of you know, on our board, Long Beach CAP is the one who made it, and he is on there talking about that, as well as staff and actors who are staff maybe as clients. So yeah, so it's a perfect tool though. 'Cause
Yes, agreed.
Knowing that staff meetings are not where you're going to bring us in to do a one-day retreat for whatever, but we can do customized webinars.
Yep, exactly.
Cheap, fast, easy.
So some social media campaign, we had really high expectations. We were going to launch a Partnership Counts Twitter handle and Instagram feed, and we realized that was also not in our bandwidth. But we are using the CA Partnership Twitter handle and Instagram feed to feature things on Census because we figured there's already a built-in audience anyway. So we encourage you to tap into that and repost things that we're putting there. Next month, in addition to the Census 202 Moodle Academy, we will be launching a Facebook group. It'll be a private Facebook group for community action where you can ask questions. One of the things we realize is a lot of you don't get to see each other and interact with each other on a regular basis except for these conferences. And so we want to try to bring each other in and find a way to connect. So if somebody's having a problem, if somebody has a question, you post it on the Facebook group, and one of us will answer the question, or maybe one of your colleagues will know the answer. But it's a way for us to connect online and maybe share resources and those sorts of things. If you are doing something out in the field and it's working, please tell us, because we're also gathering those stories and passing it along. And the other communications we have, so if you are a member of the Complete Count Committee, Community Action Complete Count Committee, which I really want to call the CAC3, but no one else seems to want to do that for me. If you're a part of that and you have a special red, white, and blue ribbon, dropping things, red, white, and blue ribbon that was in your badge, you have a special email that goes out every 2 weeks on Monday. Everyone else gets the Census e-news. If you're on the CACCC, you also get the Census e-news. But we have 2 emails a month for both of those things going out that talks about Census news. So one of the things we featured last week was that the Census is out knocking doors and they're enumerating those addresses so people don't get confused because Census Day is April 1st. So a lot of people think that if the Census came by to enumerate your and verify your address, then you're done with the Census and you don't have to fill it out in April. Not true. So we're pushing that information out, and we're pushing out some of the resources that we have. So right messaging, again, we will be pushing messages out as that comes back from our partners. We are also working with the Census Counts 2020 campaign to get local partners on the ground that you might already work with, frankly, but maybe you don't. So if you can find a new partner that can do something with you in the future and for the census, we encourage that. And we're going to be giving out locations for those partnerships so you can work together. We want this to be easy, cheap, simple, all those words. But one of the things that we're encouraging is to just incorporate census messages into your everyday things. Somebody asked me if they should put a census question in their intake form. No, I don't think that's a good idea at all. But if during intake you say, hey, have you heard about the census? Or make sure you fill out your census form and start a conversation, that's a touch. And we're going for 7 touches. So that's a way to talk to your clients and make them comfortable with that. Yes?
Is the census doing anything with text messaging? Because we
Yes.
haven't even talked as an agency. Our low-income clients that come in for everything, everybody has cell phones.
Yes.
Even the homeless population has cell phones these days.
They can't survive.
So
Yeah.
are they, right?
So I don't know if the census is. I do know that some of our partners are doing you sign up and then you get a push notification. Hey, did you fill out your census form? Hey, did you? So we will be getting information on that because I don't know that it's worth us doing our own text message alert system because that sounds cumbersome and expensive for us to implement. But it was one of the recommendations. We had a digital audit, and they suggested that we look into doing that. So we will find information on that and figure out who's doing it that you can jump on the bandwagon, or maybe it might be something that you want to do anyway as an agency. So we will be giving information on that. Yes. The bottom line is that we are trusted messengers. We are the people, when you are at the lowest of spots in your life, we are where you come for help. And so we are the people who can tell you that the census is simple, easy, and important. Those are the 3 Census Bureau tagline words. We are the ones who can say that message. This is Derek Simpson. He's on this is our video. It doesn't play. I think I actually have it on my hard drive, but I'm not going to do it. 7 minutes.
No, we should only have 15 minutes.
I know. I'm going to skip these questions. These are common questions and answers. We've already done all of them. except for, so safety, we're going to talk about safety. So safety, the Census Bureau, as I mentioned, is a year-round agency. On the first day of employment at the Census Bureau, census agents raise their right hand and pledge an oath to Title 13. This was implemented in the 1970s as a fail-safe method to protect privacy information. And Title 13 says that if you release or reveal private information on any individual, you can be fined for $250,000 or you can be incarcerated for 5 years. 5 years, $250,000, or both.
And they do prosecute.
And they do prosecute. So it's a barrier for people who work at the Census Bureau to release any kind of information. That privacy is actually one of the things that prevents us as Community Action Agency members from filling out a form with our clients. And I know we help them fill out all kinds of forms. I can't make decisions for you. I can only give you information. So you should do what's best for your particular situation, because we know that some of these people trust you, but technically it is a privacy issue for you to not do that. And I know that's ridiculous considering that LIHEAP has a more intense application form than this, but that is the official stance, is that we cannot fill it out. But you can pull it up on a computer for them. You can go through the form with them before they sit down and fill it out. You can talk to them about what the answers are if they're unclear. And if you've got somebody with a disability who can't read or can't see, you can have them call the phone line and they can fill out the census over the phone. So there are lots of different ways that you can help them. They do have, TDY for hard of hearing. They have that set up as well. So there are ways for you to help. You just can't sit there and fill the form out for them. The other thing that the census does, any of you do genealogy research? Lots of people are super excited about 2022 because that's when the next release of census data information will be released, and people will get the next decade of information about their families. So the forms we fill out next year will be under lock and key until 2092. So you guys have a long time to wait for that. But that's also a protection for privacy information. Those forms will not be released until probably most of us have left the earth. Please.
In terms of working in your agencies and in terms of helping people and providing places, especially in internet-challenged areas, how many of you have computers that clients use in your agencies of some kind, for some purpose? How many of you run VITA programs for volunteer income tax assistance? They end in mid-April, right? Yeah, and they're not in use all the time. We have plenty of agencies, not my idea, came from a Maryland agency, who are going to repurpose their VITA. All our best ideas come from you guys. We just give credit. You should always give credit. Repurpose a VITA lab in the off hours and pull up the census webpage and offer to do it. If case managers are working with people and say, hey, have you heard about the census? They can do it with them. They just can't fill it out for them, right? But they can answer those questions. But if you've got computers and you've got internet access, there is nothing that says they can't fill it out at the agency. Agency can't fill it out, but they can fill it out at the agency. Or they can use a phone at the agency. Or they can do a number of things this way, right? That fit into your agency's client processes already. Not to make more work for you, to make this part of what you're already doing. If you need to go, and we do know that people do, we dearly ask that you do the evaluation on the blue form that went around, or feel free to do it in the app. We do use your feedback, so please do give us some. Praise is nice, feedback's better. So I just want to make it clear, though, that as having run an agency, having worked in agencies, there's lots of ways to make this easy. We're putting up census posters around to make it clear that the agency thinks the census is okay, talking about it and working it into your daily processes as a question or as an assist is what we're asking. Not a huge lift, and we promise not to ask you for data. We promise not to say how many clients filled it out with you. We promise not to call you up and say, hey, would you mind taking a tally of all of, we're not doing
Is that a knock on Roma?
No, because we're using a proxy outcome here of how many people in your community fill out the census, which we will know, because you do get the data, just not personal data, all right? After the census data is released, We know how many people in your community answered the census.
But
Right?
one other thing, you can also have a partner, a census partner come and enumerate for you. So if you have a specific group of people who really need that one-on-one help, the Census Bureau can send a Title 13 pledged enumerator to your facility. You can have a pizza party, you can have a census party and have somebody come in and help those people fill out their form. So that's also another option. Okay. We've answered all of these things. I'm just going to go to this slide.
Ellen has choices at the end.
Yeah,
But
I want to
questions
ask
from
some
the audience.
questions. This is our contact information. I am Lindsay. This is Lil. Alan Stansbury is in the front row. Jim is always in the back. Jim Masters is in the back. Any of us can answer questions for you. Please reach out. And I love getting the questions after these seminars because it gives me more information to give everybody else. So help us help you. And with that, I'm going to answer any other questions that you have right now. Yeah.
I have a question. We have a lot of meat packing plants in our communities.
Meat packing plants.
And we bus these workers 3 times a day. Now, would this be something that we want to reach out to the employers, or would this be something that we could say on the bus? You know what I mean?
Both.
Okay.
So we have, one of our partners is working with businesses, and actually the lack of a citizenship question is making this far easier. We will be sending around resources to share with businesses in your community. So your workers might be UFCW, and if they are, you should talk to the union. If not, you should most certainly talk to the bus drivers and have there be an announcement on the bus every once in a while, and talk to the employers, because they might have that relationship, they might not. It really depends. So if they have that kind of employee-employer relationship, then by all means, they should mention something. But they should gauge that for themselves. But we will have materials for you to pass along to a business employer.
Do you also have placards on your bus inside, things, places people can look at things, a place where you
We
can
do.
drop an 8.5 by 11 that people see when they get off the bus, usually, right?
Yeah, I mean, because we did that for our survey, and the survey did not go well. And, because people look at it and they just go on the ground. And
Right.
I actually rode the bus to try to do surveys to figure out we did a day where we're trying to reach 1,000 people, and it went okay, but I think they don't really, because there's a language barrier, it's not just Spanish, it's African, they
So one thing, because of our coalition, if there's a language that's not one of the 59 that the census is going to be translating materials into, email me. I will find that language translation for you, because our partners are doing that work. We don't do language translations because how would we even pick? But I have access to that. And so if you need something other than the one of those 59, tell me. I'll find it. Yes?
I'm just gonna say, one of the things that we're doing, and especially talking about the bus, is we've worked with the library to have mobile hotspots.
Yep.
And that might be a really good time to put a mobile hotspot on the bus. And the other thing we did too is we got the cheapest possible tablets you can
It's
get.
$29, whatever.
Yeah, and all it does is it goes to the census website. So nobody's gonna steal it, it's not of any value to anybody, and if you could have like 4 or 5 of those and be on a bus, you should be able to get a
Say, hey,
really
you know,
good
it's okay to
response.
fill out the census, and if they refuse, they refuse.
Refuse.
Right.
But if they're asked, and by someone they trust. You know, and that's this is the absolute key with the whole trusted messenger piece. It has to be someone they trust. So preachers, caseworkers, their bus driver, they probably trust, actually. If their bus driver asks them about the census, it's probably better than somebody else asking them about the census.
Right.
Because they know that person, right?
So
Head Start bus drivers, Head Start home visitors. I'm just throwing them out.
So to one question one comment. So the libraries, because of the online component to this, it's a whole big thing about resources, and the federal government doesn't want to pay for it. It's crazy. But the libraries have stepped up, and they are training their network to be helpful. And so you can have your clients go to the library, and the library should be able to assist somebody if they can't come to you for some reason. So that's another avenue. Thank you for bringing that up. Question?
Well, not that 10 questions is hard-to-reach clients that are either homeless or maybe have a touch of mental illness. We're gonna do something similar, I think, to the tablet and the hotspots, but will it stop them when they put their name and birth date in if they've already done it? I mean, we have some clients that may get confused, and we obviously
Yes.
cross paths. So just so they're not, you know what I'm saying? If we
Yes.
make them go through the whole process, will it stop
Jim,
them?
will it stop them or will it,
Depends on how much information they put on, and there's two forms that's the same. If they spell their name exactly the same, if their address is the same or even close, the census will dedupe. If they put variations of the name and variations of the address, it might not be catched. But the number of people who do that, as you point out, many of whom have other issues, is a very tiny percentage of the total.
we're less concerned about a homeless person being counted twice than a homeless person not being counted.
Oh, no, I meant
Right,
just for-
but no, I mean, there are some people, I mean, I know that there are some people in assisted living facilities who'd be like, I didn't fill out my census form, and they call 15 times. They do have systems in place to catch that, I promise. So that is the thing. We don't have time to do a lot of things today, so I do encourage you to join Jim and Alan tomorrow. And I do encourage you to, to find me, to find Lil, to talk to Jim and Alan around the conference. We're here all week. We don't have a big budget, but we do have buttons, as you've seen.
And for all who I didn't give buttons to, we want to take some home for staff? Come on.
The buttons came out of, I went to Texas, and I was at the Texas Community Association meeting, and nobody was talking to me, and I was very prominently outside, and I kept waiting for people to talk to me, and I thought, I need a button. So we have buttons, but I actually have one on my purse, and I got asked at the farmer's market the other day, really, do you want me to ask you about the census? I was like, yes, I do. I really do. Maybe that's taking my work home a little bit too much. But we also, we didn't have a big, we're trying to do a lot of visibility here at the conference. So please make sure you get ribbons that say Community Action Counts, or if you're on the Partnership Complete Count Committee, find those and wear the buttons and talk to people who are not in here. I'm empowering all of you to go out and talk to the rest of the conference that wasn't here today. This is really crucial for community action. I mean, this is a really big deal for our funding for the next 10 years. This could really do a lot of good for our community if we can get our people counted, and our people count. For people who have been told that they're nothing for their lives, like, this is a moment where you can empower them to feel like they're worth something, and they can do something for their community by bringing in a $2,000 federal check in the door. So any way you can do to help our cause and mission, we appreciate you, and we're here to help. So with that, I think we're kind of on time, and we're going to wrap it up, but we're going to stay around. Thanks, Jim.